The young woman right here.
Thank you very much, sir. Aga Khan Academy, Senior School, Ann Gishohi. My question is about education. And you have just talked about we working together. My question is, how would Kenyan and American educators benefit mutually from the vast insight and knowledge as well as technology which they possess?
Well, there's a number of ways they can benefit. First of all, let me say again that if you look around the world and around Africa in particular, you are way ahead of most countries, number one. It seems to me, by the way, the most difficult problem you have is not in education at the college level, but in making primary education available to all in a way that all can afford it and all can be prepared to move on. That is a daunting undertaking, but one that I would urge those of you who are younger and engaged in education to put a great deal of focus on. By the way, to this day in the United States of America, even though we have universal education, and we have had since the late 1800s, we are struggling still to provide a better quality of education equally throughout our country so that we are able to provide the kind of educational base that every child in America is able to, if they desire, aspire to go on to college and graduate school and meet their potential. So for me, that is a place where I, a young man or woman in this country interested in education, I'd be putting a lot of focus. But secondly, there is in fact a desire on the part of the United States, and I would argue others as well, to expand educational exchange programs, to increase them, not diminish them. Let me be very selfish about this. It's very much in the interest of the United States of America to have scores and hundreds of Kenyans going to university in the United States of America. Because that way you get to see firsthand not only the education that's available, but you get to see and decide for yourself whether or not we are as we advertise ourselves to be, whether we are as good or as bad as we say we are or others say we aren't. It gives you an idea, an insight to look into us and make judgments about us. And in the process, you improve us. You improve us. You make us better. So it's a selfish motivation we have in wanting to extend and expand those educational opportunities. But today, what's happening in my country, and I wish my wife, Jill Biden, were here today. She is here today, but she is visiting some AIDS clinics. But I wish she were here to answer your question. She is the first woman who is the spouse of a vice president ever to work full-time. She has a full-time paying job as a professor at a community college. One of the things that we found in America, and I suspect you'll find here, that one of the great accesses to higher education and the transition point for people from going from the equivalent of a high school after 12 years of education into a college setting or a trade school setting, or we call community colleges. We believe very strongly in our country, and the United Nations is also looking at this, that one of the best, cheapest, and most powerful ways to expand education and higher education is through a community college system, which, if you're interested, and you seem to be practically and specifically interested, I'd be happy to have one of my staff give you a card and we can give you a great deal of information relating to that. But beyond that, there's also new technologies. New technologies in terms of everything from the expanded use of the internet all the way to classroom teaching by distance. And so I don't presume to know enough about your education system to tell you what would be best suited for Kenya. But there are many avenues being made available as a consequence of technology to broaden the spread of information and education in ways that never existed. And one thing your country has shown that human capital I referenced has a thirst for education, a thirst for knowledge and an understanding that your future, your strength, your capacity lies in the absorption as much of it as you can get. So I'm sorry for the general answer, but it was a general question. But the hope is real. The cooperation, we're prepared to work with you at every level on. But one thing I'd call to your attention is the ability to talk about the use of what we call community colleges. Those things that are short of a four-year college that provide everything from trade education and in the trades to access to formal four-year college and bachelor's degree. So I hope that answers your question, but I'm delighted to, if you would be willing, if you don't mind, to give my staff your name before you leave and a point of contact, I can get you more information and get you someone much smarter than me, my wife, to give you even better information. Okay? Someone in the middle, the gentleman standing. Yes, sir. We'll get you a microphone, I think. Well, there's two. I'll get you both. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ngacha Njeri. I'm the honorary chairperson of Imagine Kenya Youth Initiative. And we believe...
That's exactly right.
Imagine Kenya. Imagine a nation united. Imagine an inseparable movement of young people who believes in the power of bringing their own resurgence through promulgation of virtues that makes entirety of personality. That's Imagine Kenya.
That's Barack Obama.
Now my question to you, sir. Before my question, I want to say, the future of a better, more equal, united and democratic Kenya lies in the hands of young people who have less historical baggage that ties them to the current status quo that represses reforms. Now I want to ask, in 1960s, there was the Kennedy airlift. Now we are talking of 2010. Can we have Joe Biden mass airlift for young people to go and study in US? Then we come back like Professor Wangare Maathai, we start there as Nobel Peace Prize winners. That's question number one. Question number two.
The answer is yes. The first question, the answer is yes.
Question number two. In we are talking of the AGOA Treaty that was signed between the African states and the United States of America. It wanted to strengthen the ICT projects in Africa. And we as young people, we are trying to forge ahead with the ICT project. So we are asking, because the project has not yet kicked off, and United States is the key main holder within the treaty, what's your plan for this ICT project? Because we are talking of the BPO, which is now taking tall order to save the young people. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for your enthusiasm. Professor, I'll tell you what, I'm getting so old, all these PPIT, QPTTs, you know what I mean? I wish the hell someone would just speak straight, you know what I mean? You know, I'm the guy who wrote a thing, become a pretty famous law in the United States called the Violence Against Women Act, because I think women do not get equal treatment. And everybody calls it VAWA, violence against. I said, no, don't write in my memorandum VAWA. I know what it means, but I hate acronyms. But at any rate, let me answer your question two ways, or answer to both questions, hopefully. Number one, yes, that's what I'm referring to. Whether you call it an airlift or not, the way in which, look, there's a famous American journalist you may have heard of, Tom Friedman. And Tom Friedman was the first guy to write about the world is now flat. What he meant by that was that what happens in Nairobi is heard in Beijing, is reverberated in Cairo, and bounces into New York, all within the same news cycle. So we are joined in ways that is both frightening and refreshing. And the best thing we could be doing now, in my view, and this has been my mantra since I got elected. I used to be young. I was the second youngest man in the history of the United States of America ever to be elected to the United States Senate. And people say, why did I stay in the Senate so long? Well, after being in the Senate 35 years, there were still 51 people older than me. It made me feel young, even though I knew I wasn't. But here's the point. My entire career, I have believed, particularly as the world has gotten flatter, has shrunk, is that what we have to do is we have to interface with one another. We have to be closer to one another. We have to get to the point we understand one another. And the single best vehicle to do that the quickest is to educate one another in one another's countries, because that takes away the mystique. I'll give you an example. I was speaking in Baghdad, and I was asked about the United States and its attitude toward the Muslim world and why we didn't understand. And I pointed out that the largest mosque in Los Angeles, California, is bigger than the largest mosque in Iraq. And people said, oh my God, that's not true. It can't be true. Well, it is. It is. So we want to understand one another. And the best way to do that is not just to educate for education's sake so you have a tool upon which to build your nation, but so you better understand one another. So we have, as the President and I, want to continue to expand these exchange programs. And we can go into detail at another time. And if you, again, give me your name. And one thing you'll probably find out from your press and mine, I never say anything I don't mean. I often say more than I should, but I never say anything I don't mean. So I would like to get your name and do it. The second part of your question is, we are just beginning the process of finding ways in which for your products to be able to make it onto American shores without any duty, to be able to be imported freely. And by the way, in some sense, this is against our immediate self-interest. I come from a state that's a textile state, Delaware, where nylon was invented. It's a textile state. And they get very mad at me as when I was a senator saying we ought to import textiles from Kenya. We ought to let them come in without having a duty on them, et cetera. We're doing those things. But rather than talk about that particular act, let me remind you of something, the central theme I want to keep pushing with you. If you make the changes that it was in your grasp in the next several months to make, if you implement those democratic changes, you will find you will be not looking to the United States or anywhere else for favor and access. You will become a magnet of investment yourselves. You will not, we will no longer be looking at, as I said before, what can we do for Kenya? We'll be looking at what can we do with Kenya. And that's what you've got to do. So set your sights high as you have. The key to your economic prosperity lies in your democratic reforms. I come from a state, as I said, where the majority, literally the majority of American corporations are incorporated. I make the case, and there's Chamber of Commerce members here from the United States of America, business people here, raise your hand or stand up. Stand up, please. These guys, if you get them aside and ask them what they worry about when they invest in another country, first thing they say is corruption. Second thing they say is making sure that the property rights are treated equally. You guys can sit down, I don't want to embarrass you. But my point is, don't lose sight of the prize. The prize is a real, live, transparent, democratic system that not only you trust, but the rest of the world trusts. Look, I'll conclude with this. For all the difficulties we're having internationally, with the financial meltdown concerns of Europe, with the major recession that hit worldwide, with the American deficit and all the rest, read the latest news. Where are the majority, when all the business enterprises around the world were asked last week where they're inclined to make their investment and put their money, where do they, 40% of them said, where? The United States. Now, is that because the United States economy is growing at 8%? It's not. Is that because the United States doesn't have a deficit? It does. Is that because we have no economic problems? No. It's because of the belief in our democratic system that is still unshakable. That's what even these businessmen and women who arguably care for nothing but what happens to their shareholders. They want to be a place where they know there is certitude, where there's fairness, where they're not going to find out that an official's brother has to be dealt with in order to get a license to go out and build a plant. So folks, your future lies in deepening your democratic roots. And I don't care how you vote, none of my business, but I can tell you one thing. If a year from now, there is still doubt about whether or not you have a judiciary that is focused on justice as instead of itself, if a year from now there is still doubt about whether or not corruption reigns and the police are not free of corruption, then your future will be mortgaged in a way that you will regret. Take hold. Look, I'm much older than you, but in the 1960s, in my state, in my country, the fight was over civil rights in America and women's rights. And the older generation wanted no part of the change we wanted. But we insisted. We organized. We were a pain in the side of the establishment. But we did not relent. And we changed America. We have much more change to do. I am not arguing that we are the beacon of all that's good. That is not my point. My point is, change never comes from the top. It never comes from the generation that is in power. The generation in power may be the vehicle of change because the generation below them has insisted upon it. Insist on it. Insist on it. Believe in yourself. Then, by the way, I'm not just trying to be nice. I'm not just being selective here. This is the history of the story of the progress of my country. It's the history of the story, the progress of every country that makes it. And it would be such a waste to squander the opportunity you have now. Because as I said, you are the best hope for all of East Africa. You are the best hope for this continent right now. And by the way, if you make it, you'll see the change you produce will become contagious. It has a contagion to it. So don't lay too much on you, but if you don't, I ain't talking to you no more. I'm only kidding. You can do this. All right, I know I'm supposed to go, but I'll take a couple more questions. How about this young woman right here? Oh, I'm sorry, I promised. Yeah, and you have a collar on, and I want to go to heaven. So give that man the...
Yes, sir. I see you are very proud of being old, but I'm prouder than you.
I'm not proud of being old. I have nothing else I can do about it.
I am prouder than you. I've been a minister of the gospel. I'm Timothy Joya.
Yes.
And I've been a minister of the gospel for over 40 years. Some of that 8 years I spent in Princeton University. I got my PhD from there. And I know a bit of American politics because I did political science and American foreign policy.
You're a dangerous combination, a minister and a politician. I don't know, Reverend.
And here in Kenya, I'm the one who started the first shot on having a new constitution in 1985.
You were right.
And also started the first shot on going to multi-party democracy on January 1990. And also went to the constitutional court so that the people of Kenya may have a referendum. And I won. So what I'm saying is that I embody the history of Kenya change, and I embody the constitutional process. Now that process is at attack. How do you reconcile yourself with the fact that the forces attacking these constitutions are funded by the American right-wing evangelical system, and you yourself, you are helping us with less than those people are willing to pour in Kenya to mesmerize our own retrogressive forces in Kenya, both political and religious. I would like also to know that I hear also that you are a feminist like me. But what can we do to, because this constitution allows and permits the new one, that at least 1/3 of the positions allowed in public leadership shall belong to women. How can that happen in reality other than in myth? Can you compare your progress in America and how we are doing in Kenya, and is that achievable in our lifetime, that women shall be able to be part of the leadership of this country to that extent?
Yes. Now, I understand. Let me answer the last part first. You're going to have to clarify the first part of your statement as to, I thought you said, how can I explain the interference of the United States? I didn't understand. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
How can you reconcile the fact that when you are supporting us here, on one hand, your support is not as much as the support being given to our retrogressive religious wings, right-wing people, to the American right-wing evangelicals, to mesmerize...
You have to be more, I don't know what you mean. I'm not sure.
To reconcile both. You are giving help here, on one hand, yes, that we may have a new constitution. But Americans also, the right-wing evangelicals, are also giving help to those who don't want that constitution.
Oh, I got it. Well, let me explain that by we're 300 million people. Let's start off there. The government of the United States of America. President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, the United States Congress. The political establishment is not giving sustenance to the right wing. The right wing is part of my problem. So, look, we have a right wing, a left wing, an up wing, a down wing. We have everybody. And that we do not have the power as a government to tell any individual elected official what he or she can or cannot say. That's one of the drawbacks of democracy, facetiously speaking, that everybody gets to say what they think. Don't confuse that with the position of the United States government, the ambassador of America to Kenya. Don't confuse that with the position of the Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States, the President of the United States. So we cannot control, and I think I know what you're referring to. You have individuals who are a minority within my country, some of them elected officials, 2 or 3 of them saying, y'all should not vote for the Constitution because of a certain provision in your Constitution. That is nothing we can control. And by the way, that is an issue that in every single country I'm aware of ends up being an incredibly contentious issue. It is the most contentious issue in almost every country. And it's in ours as well. But it is not an American position. We are not attempting to tell you what should or should not be in your Constitution, and the vast majority of us do not share the view of the minority you referred to, that you refer to as the right wing. With regard to women, I'm going to say something simple to you, and you as a man of God will appreciate this more than anyone else. It starts in each of our hearts. It starts in each of our hearts. I find something fascinating. The men I know, like me, who were raised by strong women, who are married to women who are as smart or smarter than they are, literally, who have sisters who are as smart or smarter than they were, as I do, who have daughters with unlimited potential, who have granddaughters who are capable of doing anything any man can do. They are the ones most comfortable. They're the ones most comfortable with extending the equal rights to women in every field. Now, how did we do it in America? We did it in America, first of all, by the way we ultimately wrote in our Constitution and finally got the amendment that allowed women to vote. And since that day, the journey has been continuous and unrelenting, and we still have a way to go. We still do not have enough women in the United States Congress. We still do not have enough women leaders in business. But what is changing is, it came up through primarily the education system. Women now, more women in America graduate as valedictorians from their college classes than men do. More women are graduating from college than men are. More women, ironically, I never thought I'd live to see the day when the debate in America is, what do we do to get men better educated? Am I joking? The Americans, you know that's literally true. Literally true. Why are boys dropping out of school and girls are not? Why are boys not graduating in college and girls are? So education is a vehicle, but ultimately, there have to be red lines drawn, in my opinion, beyond which no man has a right to go. That's why I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. No man in my country, in my view, no man has a right to raise his hand to a woman for any reason other than self-defense. Under no circumstances. No circumstance. I'm speaking for my country. You make up your own decisions. So I don't want to hear the record say Biden came and lectured Kenya on what they should do. You asked me what my country and what we've been fighting for. Look, ladies and gentlemen, think about this. Over 51% of the brain power, 51% of the physical energy, 51% of the capacity of the world rest in the hearts and minds of women. What a stupid thing to squander it. What a stupid thing not to exploit it. What a stupid thing not to take advantage of it. And by the way, we're finding it out in America pretty decently. We're finding out in a recession, there's an awful lot of, this recession has badly hurt men. More men have lost jobs than women. Women, in many cases, are the sole breadwinner now in America. And by the way, there's nothing like getting a man to understand the potential of women than having a talented daughter. It changes everything. I can remember, and I'll end with this. I'll give you one. I'm sorry. This is something as you can tell, I'm not passionate about it. We passed a law back in the 1970s. It's called Title IX. And it was about sports. Sport. Soccer, basketball, lacrosse, all the sports we play in America. And we said that if any university was going to get federal money from the federal government to help it in any way, it had to provide equal opportunity for women who wanted to play sport as well as men. And guess what? We only had about 300,000 high school women engaging in sport at the time. Now, in organized sports, there's millions. We had considerably fewer women at the university level engaging in sports. Now there's hundreds of thousands. What has it done? It has insisted that in every phase, it's not the most important thing in the world, sport, but we insisted that at every stage. Why my daughter? I have a niece who's an all-American lacrosse player. I have a granddaughter who has more talent than any boy her age. She's 10 years old. Literally, not figuratively. Why should she not, if she wants to, be able to exploit that talent? Once you realize that it's not merely in whether you can get elected to office, not merely in whether or not you have an equal right to be safe, not merely whether you have equal rights under the law, but whether or not every aspect of what you desire that's legitimate has the same chance to blossom as a man's, that's when equality begins to seep in. Women and men are very different, to state the obvious. But the truth of the matter is, the intellectual capacity, the ability to lead, different ways, but the ability to lead is important. So what we have continued to struggle with in my country, Reverend, is, for example, President Barack Obama asked me who I thought should be placed on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, our highest court, and one of our co-equal branches of government. We appointed in our term the second woman to the court. Not because she was a woman. She's incredibly qualified. She's the dean of Harvard Law School. But it's also important that the system, the politics, the courts reflect the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, ultimately, we will finally gain our collective potential when women have as much opportunity as men. It's just squandering. It's squandering a resource. It's like leaving a whole drawer full of money unopened, never pulling it out. And it's a mistake. Again, I'm sorry to go on so long, but I really think it really is one of the keys to the progress of humanity. The more women are entitled to the same opportunity as men. I'm going to take one last question, and I'm going to ask Jay, you come and pick him, so I'm not in trouble.
All right.
Pick someone on this side of the room.
Okay. Woman right there standing up. Oh, yes, yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Liliana Rui. I'm the junior speaker for the Kenya Student Parliament, and I'm representing the children of Kenya and the young people in particular. I'd first like to thank you for your opportunity to come here and talk to us young people and to inspire us. My first question is, the government of America has released funds to help the young people of Africa. So what policies and procedures are you following to make sure that these funds reach and benefit us children and our projects? That make sure that these funds won't be embezzled and that will benefit us children. And my second is, we are the children of Kenya. We face many challenges, and also I would like to ask you, if it's possible with you, we can conduct an exchange program in which you are a role model to how you run your government. In America, you're all a role model in your governorship. So we can conduct an exchange program in which we can learn your mode of governorship, and they can come and learn our mode of governorship, and through that, we can be able to exchange ideas. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let me answer the first question in a larger context. One of the reasons why we wrote the law called the Millennium Challenge, which has hundreds of millions of dollars of aid in it, was that we decided it was important that there is need all over the world. There is need in Uganda, there's a need in Tanzania, there's a need in Bangladesh, there's need all over the world for children. Too many children. Too many people are living on a couple dollars a day. Too many children are being denied. Too many children are in difficult circumstances. And it's not just the United States. The whole world, all of the modern nations of the world think there needs to be development money. But what we found was, when we looked only at the need and decided that's the way in which we should distribute the money that was available to us to distribute to the American taxpayers, we found that, as you pointed out, sometimes that money didn't get to where the need resided. So that's why we put in place certain criteria. And I'll use as one example the Millennium Challenge. That's the way now in which we distribute the bulk of the aid. Saying that you have to have a system that's transparent. You have to have a system that's not corrupt. You have to basically convince us that the money is going to go for the purposes for which it is intended. That's why I said to you, one of the things that we desperately want to do, President Obama and I, we want to provide, while you're building your own economy stronger and stronger, financial assistance to help in the areas you've talked about. But under our law now, we can't do it because you don't meet the transparency requirements. You don't meet the requirements lacking corruption or a judicial system that functions. That's why selfishly, as my daughter, who is a social worker, 28 years old, and my wife, toured the slum yesterday, they came back to me at dinner and said, Dad, you've got to do more. So much need. So much need. And the answer was, honey, I can't do it unless we can be assured, not only in Kenya but around the world, whatever dollars are sent go to the stated purpose. So that's why I am so, personally, Barack Obama is, so hopeful that you will make the necessary reforms in your system that allow us to let this money flow. Now, with regard to exchange, one of the things that we do have a number of exchange programs. I met with your reform caucus. We've characterized it. Have that correct, Mr. Ambassador? I spent a couple hours, roughly, with 10 or 11 or 12 or 9 members of your parliament who were members of a reform caucus. And interestingly, they asked me the same thing. They said, as we amend our Constitution, and all those folks were for amending it, I'm not interfering in your politics, I'm restating what they said to me. That group that I met with, all were supportive of the constitutional referendum. And they said that when we do this, we'll end up with a different form of government, where we have a parliament that is stronger, an executive that's still strong but has shared power, where there are no ministers of the government in the parliament any longer, and where the judiciary, hopefully, is more accountable. So they said, but we've not been there before, so what can you do for us? What can you do for us mechanically? Not in value judgment. How can you help us put together the systems? The young woman asked me earlier about new technology. Well, what systems do you put in place to make this new type of government run? And you had a very, very bright young representative who said to me, we just came back from the United States, and we realize we're going to need what you call the Office of Management and Budget. Sorry to sound like such a technocrat nerd here, but the Office of Management and Budget is an office that is within the executive branch of government that has over 200 economists in it, 200 specialists in it, who don't have a partisan position but analyze exactly whether or not this program or that program are able to deliver internally. I'm talking about internal U.S. use. The Congress has a thing called the Congressional Budget Office. We have a several trillion-dollar budget, so it's important there be a management that was in it so we know exactly how that money's being spent. So they asked, are you willing to help us set up our own OMB, our own CBO? Are you willing to help us through your Department of Treasury? You have so many experts. Are you willing to help us set up our committee systems and how we write a budget in this new parliament that we hope will exist? So the ambassador and I and our Johnny Carson, our Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, we sat down and said, we'll put together a plan. We will make available to you, for you, whatever you want to do with it, but we will make available experts within the Treasury Department to come and tell you how we set up our budgeting process, how we set up our accountability system. So in a sense, you're not only asking for exchange for the youth. The encouraging thing is you have some really bright members of your parliament actually saying, okay, if we get this new system, how do you actually make it work? It's like you get a new automobile, an internal combustion engine. What does the carburetor do? Do you need one? How about fuel injection? Is that important or not? It's the same system you have. The mechanics of these operations are important. And they also asked, they wanted to make sure when I spoke with your Speaker of your Parliament, And I have no idea, and I'm not making any judgment about any one of these individuals' political skills or lack thereof. But I was impressed by their questions. Your speaker asked, would we please continue to help them if the new Constitution is passed? Will we help them provide the technological capability to be able to broadcast their sessions live? Would we help in making that available? Would we give the technical assistance as to how to set it up and the financial assistance, and I ask my colleagues to correct me if I misstate any of this, the financial assistance to be able to make government more transparent to you all so you can turn on your television and see what's being deliberated. The point I'm trying to make to you is this. The answer is yes, we are prepared to have more exchanges. If you are willing to give me your name again and give it to the ambassadors people, I personally will follow up and see whether or not there are youth organizations in my country, beyond the NGOs that are all over your country, that may or may not be someone you would like to hook up with, to get a sense of how to organize. And I'm sure you're very good at it already. But get a sense of what they found to be the most useful tools and mechanism and outreach in order to get people engaged. This is all about empowering people. The ultimate answer is empowering people. You empower people, and we are still struggling with it ourselves. I'm not offering us as somehow we are the perfect model. Please do not read what I'm saying in that way. And I hope what I'm saying doesn't come across in any way as lecturing. I'm not. But what we found are two things. You empower people in two ways. You empower people by having a political system that's open and a meritocracy that allows people not based on their family, not based on their ethnicity, not based on what region they come from. If they work hard enough and are smart enough, they will be rewarded by opportunity. But the first thing you have to do, in addition to empowering people by a system that allows it, is you have to empower people with knowledge. You have to empower people. I used to have a friend. His name was a great American basketball player in college and high school. And his name was Pete McLaughlin. And he died of throat cancer 15 years ago as a young man. But he used to have a saying, which I hope you don't mind my being colloquial. He wasn't the academically most accomplished of my friends, but he was smart. And he used to have the following expression. Hope I don't confuse you with this. He used to say, Joe, you've got to know how to know. You've got to know how to know. You've got to be equipped with the tools that allow you to investigate, to allow you to make judgments about what you're being told is truthful or false, is real or good. You've got to know how to find information. I can give a young person a computer, lay it on their lap. If they've never been acquainted with it, all the billions of data points that exist and access through the internet and that computer are useless. But teach that child how to use that computer, how to know how to go after knowledge. That's empowering. That's empowering. You're way ahead of the rest of Africa in empowering your people with knowledge. Every one of you in this audience is an example of an empowered individual. Now, if you can, change the nature of your government, deepening the roots of democracy with transparency and accountability, there's virtually nothing you won't be able to do. And we will stand with you, I promise. God bless you all.
Thank you.